Right, evening everybody. It's Thursday 27th of October. It's the day before my birthday, so I'm going to celebrate my birthday by not drinking a dram tomorrow, but I'm going to have 3 tonight because I still haven't managed to catch up on myself and give myself a bit of a head start. So we're into Speyside. It's not 60 as I thought it was, it's actually only 50, but it might even be 49. I potentially have just sourced something else that I might have to swap one out. So Speyside as a region is here, probably the most well known of Scotch single malt whisky areas, and has over half of all the Scotch whisky distilleries in Scotland in this relatively small area. Now, as a general rule of thumb, it's basically the shoulder of Scotland, but it's more of a kind of square. It's like 100 miles wide and 50 miles high, for want of a better word. But at the moment there are around 50 operational distilleries, and a large number of them are ones where you might not find official bottlings of them, as it were, because quite a few of them have been set up to provide malts for blended whiskies to be sold around the world. That is a much bigger market. So we'll go through them alphabetically. So the first one at the moment, and I have done some Speysides earlier on in the challenge as I got them. Now that I've got everything together, we'll group them in one big chunk, and we'll just work our way through them alphabetically. If you want to see what's coming up, the address is on the bottom for the upcoming schedule, the list of whiskies. First one, A, Aberlour, which is a pretty well-known Speyside distillery generally anyway. Now this is a slightly older bottling. I think this is potentially maybe late 80s, early 1990s, but I have contacted somebody at Aberlour and said, look, is it going to be massively different to what you can find at the moment? And they said, not really, to be honest. They've kept their production pretty steady all the way through. So the distillery is here in Speyside, almost kind of slap bang in the middle of the Speyside region. It was officially founded in 1879 by a guy called James Fleming, who had also set up the Dalhousie distillery, or Dalhousie distillery, which we will come on to later on. But the actual kind of area of that distillery dates back to 1826, where there was another distillery that was also called Aberlour, in just up the road. It's on the banks of the River Spey and Lower, and Speyside is named after the River Spey, but the kind of the glens around it in this area. Now, the word itself, Aberlour, is Gaelic for the mouth of the babbling brook, and this possibly refers to a water source called St Dronston's Well, that originally was the water source for the distillery. I can't actually open this damn thing. There we go. Where they don't actually get the water from there anymore. It's near the Ben Rinnes mountain, which is also another distillery, and that's where they source their water from. In 1945, it was bought by a company called Campbell Distillers. They ceased floor malting in 1962, and it was then bought by Pernod Ricard in 1975. Now, at one point, and it maybe even still is, it was actually the biggest selling single malt in France, and they do quite a bit of it's mainly bourbon matured, their standard bottlings, as in this that I'm about to try, but they do quite a number of sherried versions as well, because that's quite popular in France, and they're not afraid to sort of play around with wine casks as well, because there is a bit of a French market that they're aiming for as well. Now, this is what the standard bottling looks like now. You're looking at Master of Malt selling it for 25 quid. The Whisky Exchange is selling it for 27. You do tend to find it in supermarkets for between 25 to 30 quid, and maybe 22 if it's on some kind of deal. So it's a definite entry-level price point for single malt whiskies. Nowadays, you're really looking at kind of £30 plus. So anything kind of under 30 quid, if it's good quality, you're getting really good value for money. They do another one, which is one of my all-time favourites, and it's this one called the Aberlour Abunar, which means the origin. Now, the story goes is that in 1898, there was a massive fire that pretty much demolished the distillery, and it was kind of rebuilt, redesigned and rebuilt. And in the 70s, when they were expanding and adding a couple of stills, apparently workmen found like a time capsule that had a newspaper from 1898 had the story of the fire on it that was wrapped around a bottle of Aberlour from that year. Now apparently they drank pretty much all of it before the bosses found out what they'd got. They took it away, they analysed it, and the Aberlour was originally trying to recreate this bottling that was found from that time ago. It's become more of a specialist bottling of them. They do it in batches, and I think we're on a batch 55 at this point in time. This is Oloroso sherry, really heavily sherried, cask strength and full-on cask strength. It's a non-age statement, but apparently it's anything between 5 to 25-year-old is kind of vatted together to produce each batch. I've had it a couple of times before. It's phenomenally good. It's just fantastic. Rich, fruity, Christmas cake, sherry, everything. It's an absolute sherry bomb. Standard is more bourbon matured, but there is some sherry maturation in there as well. So 40%, 25 quid. You know, we're looking at entry-level Scotch whisky here, and particularly Speyside. But it's lovely and warm on the nose. Really warming, real kind of, and this is close to bourbon. This really is Christmas cake and warm spices and sitting in front of a log fire, but it's not really smokiness. It's just, it gives you that feeling of warmth and cozy, and it's a proper wintry whiskey. But there is toffee and malt on there as well. It's a great nose. It's got everything you want in a classic Speyside Scotch single malt whiskey. Right. Lovely rich mouthfeel. There's a little bit of oakiness in there, and I think this is actually due to the age of the miniature and the fact that the seal, there wasn't really anything lost from it, but the seal I don't think was perfect, because you could see I was really struggling to actually get it off the screw cap before you start. And I'm picking up a little bit of woodiness on that, and I don't think that should be there. I don't think that would be there on the standard bottling. But there is still lovely rich fruitiness to it. There's a lovely rich mouthfeel. This dry woodiness is just kind of around the edge. I think if I took that away, which I'm fairly confident you'll find isn't there on the standard bottling, you're going to get a lovely, rich, fruity, sherried whiskey. For 25 quid, I think that's an absolute bloody bargain. I think it's fantastic whiskey. It really is good. The Aberlour, I think you're looking at about 50 quid a bottle for it, maybe even a little bit more. It's been a while since I've seen it in the shops and I've been looking for it. I know when we were selling it at the whisky shop, this is over 10 years ago, I think it was about 40 to 45 quid, which was a ruddy bargain then. Inflation, the way the whisky market's going at the moment, it may even be pushing 60, maybe even more than that, but it's still a fantastic whiskey. But this is great. This is really, really good. The woodiness I'm picking up, I think I'm fairly confident, is because of the age of the miniature itself. I wasn't able to source a sample of a more recent release of Aberlour. I think the fault that's in this whiskey is because of the miniature and because of the age of it, but even with that woodiness in it, outside of that, it's classic whiskey. It really is. But if you're a bourbon drinker, this would be a good introduction to Scotch because it's got all those fruity elements as well. It's lovely. It's really nice, even with the woodiness. I am going to have to pick up, I think, a standard bottling of it because I think this particular sample just isn't doing any benefits. I can't screw it back on, so that's not a great sign. There wasn't a lot of loss, but I think it has been slightly tainted. Right, I've got to keep them quick. I was trying to get under 10 minutes for all of them, and I think I've managed it. So I shall see you at the next one. Cheers. Turn it off, Ben.